Art Spiegelman was born February 15th, 1948 in Stockholm, Sweden. He then immigrated to the US with his parents in 1951 before they settled in Queens. Growing up, he was influenced and inspired by the Mad magazine to become a cartoonist, so much so that as a teenager he went to the Manhattan High School of Art and Design, where he sold illustrations to the Long Island Post. During the mid-1960s, he worked for Topps Chewing Gum for 2 decades, helping to create the popular trading cards, Garbage Pail Kids, and Wacky Packages. Spiegelman spent the 1970s starting to make a name for himself in underground comics, producing autobiographical comic strips that he would then collect into his first book, Breakdown. However, the graphic novel that he's most well known for is Mouse. The first Mouse graphic novel was serialized from 1980 to 1991. The story is from the perspective of Spiegelman, who is interviewing his father about his experience as a Polish Jew and Holocaust survivor. It depicts Jews, Nazis, and Poles as mice, cats, and pigs, respectively. In 1992, it became the first and only graphic novel to receive a Pulitzer Prize. The book is autobiographical as it uses the real experiences of his father and Spiegelman's own experiences growing up and dealing with his mother's suicide. The book originated from a 3-page comic strip originally written for Funny Animals. When he showed the strip to his father, he gave Spiegelman more background information on his time in Auschwitz. The comic uses just black and white, focusing heavily on mark making for tone and texture. The mice particularly look very similar, with very few actual having defining features, such as Spiegelman's father and his glasses. I think this is done to emphasize how the Nazis treated Jews in concentration camps by stripping them of their identities and making them all look the same. It also may have made panels easier to draw, as it would be essentially drawing the same simple characters over and over again. Here is a collection of artworks by Spiegelman. When trying to find artwork, a lot of it is panels from Mouse, so I found it hard to know what his art looks like outside of this specific graphic novel. The pieces I did find all seem to range in style, although one thing that stays consistent is his use of dark tones. Even the images with colour, everything seems muted and dark, much like the themes he seems to draw. I'm not sure whether I like his art or not, although I love the style of Mouse, as I really enjoy illustrators that use a lot of mark making in their work. I think you can very strongly see the influence old comics has had on his work, as a lot of that style travels over to his. Spiegelman has produced other books over time, a good portion of them being good children's books, but none have been quite so well received as Mouse. This desaturated and muddiness of colour transfers over to a lot of his other books and pieces as well. I think looking at his art makes me feel sort of sad. Even pieces that are meant to be funny or positive have this shadow casting over them, and it makes me sort of uncomfortable to look at. While I can't deny he's a very talented illustrator, there's something kind of off-putting by a lot of his drawings, and I'm not sure whether it's intentional or not a lot of the time. You can see a lot of Mad magazine's influence in his work. Started by Harvey Kurtzman and other comic creators at the time, Mad was started in 1952, beginning as a comic book illustrated by E.C. The first issue was nearly all written by Kurtzman, with illustrations created by himself, Wally Wood, Will Elder, Jack Davies, and John Severin. Wood, Elder, and Davis would become the 3 main illustrators throughout the comic book's 23-issue run. For the 24th issue, the comic changed into its now more well-known magazine format. Kurtzman remained for 1 more year before leaving his editor role. For my visual response, I'd like to explore the style of Mouse and create an image using mark making. As to the story of Mouse is based on Auschwitz in World War II, I think it could be interesting to explore a modern issue using animals as a representation of groups of people. For example, things happening in Parliament or the Black Lives Matter movement. I've started to create some illustrations that I think will lend to a final piece based off his work. I tried to recreate a panel, but found his style is actually quite hard to emulate. So I think I'm going to make an image that is using the same themes as like using animals as a representation of a group of people, um, as opposed to trying to mimic his style, but then still using predominantly black and white and trying to make it look quite obviously inspired by Mouse rather than trying to make something that looks like it could have been in the graphic novel.